Welcome, and let yourself relax into the quiet of this evening. Set aside the rush of your day and allow your mind to slow, like a candle burning steadily in a darkened room. Tonight, we will wander into this strange, sometimes unsettling, but always fascinating world of early medicine in Europe. This is not the medicine of sterile hospitals or precise instruments, but a time when surgery was as much superstition as science, when illness seemed to hover like a shadow over entire cities, and when healers were both respected and feared. The 17th century was an age of transition, caught between ancient traditions and the first whispers of modern science. It was a world where physicians still leaned heavily on the works of long-dead scholars, where surgeons worked with bare hands and rudimentary tools, and where ordinary people trusted in remedies that seem almost unimaginable to us now. Yet, in this world, lives were saved, ideas shifted, and medicine slowly began its march toward the practices we know today. We will begin our journey by imagining what it would be like to step into the life of a 17th century surgeon, to hold their instruments, to face their challenges, and to understand why such a profession was often seen not as noble, but as crude and terrifying. As you picture this life, keep in mind that even in these grim details, there is a rhythm and unchanging cycle of human struggle, innovation, and endurance. A rhythm that, like the steady beat of your heart, will carry us through this long and calming history. Imagine waking before dawn in a small European town of the 1600s. The streets outside are still cobblestones, damp with mist. Your home is modest, perhaps little more than a room above your workspace. You are a surgeon, not a physician of high esteem, schooled in universities and cloaked in Latin, but a man of knives, saws, and needles. Your place is practical, necessary, yet despised by many. Your tools await you. They are simple, heavy, and unpolished. A bone saw with a thick wooden handle, a knife whose blade is sharpened on whetstone but dulled by use, hooks for holding flesh aside, and needles for crude stitching, each more like something from a tailor's kit than from a healer's hand. They gleam faintly in the low light, not because they are clean, but because you wipe them only briefly after each use. Soap and water are considered sufficient, though often neglected in haste. The idea that unseen creatures could spread disease is centuries away. Your first patient of the day arrives before the sun fully rises. He has broken his leg in a fall at the docks. The limb is bent at an unnatural angle, bone pressing hard against the skin. You know at once what must be done. There are no numbing agents, no anesthesia, no comfort to offer beyond perhaps a draught of brandy or a cloth to bite down on. The man lies on a table of rough wood. His family holds him still, their hands tight on his arms and shoulders. You set your saw to the limb. The room fills with the sound of wood and bone parting, and the man's screams echo through the house. You do not pause. The quicker the work, the greater the chance he will live. When it is over, you stitch what remains with thread, winding it clumsily, hoping the flesh will close. The air is thick with the scent of sweat and blood. The man is pale, trembling. He may survive, but equally, he may not. Infection is common, almost expected. You have done your part, but the rest is in the hands of fate. This is your life. To be a surgeon in the 17th century is to live between necessity and disdain. Physicians, trained in universities, consider themselves above you. They study ancient texts, debate humors and balances, and prescribe herbs or bleeding. You, meanwhile, are closer to the barber than to the doctor. Many surgeons still practice barbering on the side, cutting hair and trimming beards to make ends meet. The red and white barber's pole, still seen today, once symbolized this very mixture of trade and medicine. The red for blood, the white for bandages. People fear you, yet they need you. When a tooth must be pulled, when a boil must be lanced, when a limb must be removed, they come to you. They do not trust you, but they have no choice. To many, you are less a healer and more a butcher man who works with knives and saws, whose patients cry out in agony. You are tolerated only because the work must be done, and the work is constant. War is common, and battlefields produce endless wounds. Soldiers carried back from fighting are brought to you, their injuries raw and untreated. You stitch and cut, often outdoors, with flies gathering quickly. In towns, accidents with carts, with plows, with tools, all provide you with steady labor. It is grim, repetitive, and dangerous, for disease does not discriminate. You handle the sick and the dying every day. You breathe their air, and often you too will fall ill, swept away by fevers you cannot explain. Yet, despite the suffering, there is routine here. You rise each morning, sharpen your blades, and face whatever comes. The rhythm of your life is one of constant struggle and endurance. You do not expect gratitude, only survival. The patients who live rarely thank you, and those who die are mourned by their families, but quickly forgotten in your hands. Imagine yourself in this world. The damp chill of the streets, the heavy smell of your workshop, the rough wood beneath your hands as you steady your patient. The tools clatter in their box, familiar yet ominous. This is the life of a surgeon in the 17th century. Brutal, necessary, and forever caught between fear and duty. From the rough, practical world of the 17th century surgeon, let us drift back a little earlier in time to the life of a man whose work began to shift medicine away from superstition and tradition, and toward something closer to science. His name was Andreas Vesalius, and though he lived in the 16th century, his influence shaped the world that later surgeons inherited. Vesalius was born in Brussels in 1514 into a family of physicians. From the beginning, medicine seemed to run in his blood, though what he chose to do with it was unlike anyone before him. At that time, medical knowledge in Europe rested heavily on the writings of Galen, a Greek physician from the 2nd century. For more than 1,000 years, Galen's texts were treated as near sacred. Physicians copied them, quoted them, and taught them without question. Yet, Galen had studied only animals, not humans. For centuries, his errors were passed along as truth. Imagine Vesalius as a young student in Paris, attending lectures where professors recited Galen's words from memory as if they were scripture. Meanwhile, a dissection took place on a table before the students, not by the professor, but by a lower assistant, sometimes even a barber surgeon. The professor rarely looked at the body itself. Instead, He read aloud, describing what should be there, according to Galen. Even if what the students saw with their own eyes did not quite match, Vesalius could not ignore the contradictions. He leaned closer to the cadavers, pointing out bones, muscles, and veins that did not align with the ancient texts. His curiosity and his unwillingness to accept tradition unquestioned set him apart. Eventually, he began to take the knife into his own hands, performing dissections himself, unusual, even scandalous act for a scholar of his standing. In Padua, where he later taught, his reputation grew quickly. Students flocked to see him, not just because of what he said, but because of what he showed them. He laid out the human body with meticulous care, describing each part in detail, matching observation to description. His lectures were not distant readings, but living demonstrations. The body itself became the teacher, not the words of a man long dead. In 1543, when Vesalius was just 28 years old, he published his great work, De Humani Corporis Fabrica, on the fabric of the human body. It was a book unlike any other in medicine, lavishly illustrated, beautifully detailed, and above all, accurate. Page after page depicted bones, muscles, organs, and veins with clarity and precision. The drawings, based on his own dissections, replaced imagination with observation. They showed anatomy as it was, not as tradition had claimed it to be. Imagine yourself leafing through that book, the smell of ink heavy, the pages thick and textured. The illustrations are striking figures standing, almost like statues, posed against landscapes, their muscles peeled back layer by layer. They look almost alive, as though they are teaching you through their stillness. For a student in the 16th century, these images were a revelation. But Vesalius paid a price for his boldness. To question Galen was to challenge centuries of authority, and many physicians were not ready to accept it. He was accused of arrogance, even of sacrilege, for cutting open human bodies and exposing errors in the revered texts. Some whispered that his dissections bordered on the profane. Others spread rumors that he had stolen corpses from gallows or graveyards, practice not entirely untrue, as cadavers for study were scarce and often obtained through questionable means. The weight of opposition wore on him. Eventually, Vesalius left his academic post and entered the service of Emperor Charles V, and later Philip II of Spain, as a court physician. The grandeur of the court could not erase his longing for study, yet it brought him stability. Still, controversy followed him. Stories circulated that he had dissected a nobleman while the man was not yet fully dead. Rumor likely false, but damaging nonetheless. His life ended abruptly in 1564 during a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. On his return voyage, his ship wrecked on the island of Zakynthos, where he died, likely of exhaustion or illness, at just 50 years old. His body was never found. And yet, his legacy endured. Vesalius had broken the chains of tradition. By daring to look with his own eyes, by daring to question the unquestionable, he set medicine on a new course. The surgeons of the 17th century, crude and unclean as their work often was, still owed their knowledge of the body to the clarity Vesalius had given. His book became the foundation of modern anatomy, a bridge between superstition and science. Imagine him one last time, standing in a cold lecture hall, knife in hand, pointing not to a text, but to a body before his students. The flicker of lamplight glints on bone and sinew. His voice is calm, steady, as he explains what he sees, not what Galen once wrote, but what lies undeniably before them. In that moment, history bends quietly toward truth. From the anatomical theaters of Vesalius, let us move forward again into a different corner of history, one not of scalpels or learned books, but of streets, of rhythm, and of mystery. It is the summer of 1518 in the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. The sun is high, the air thick with the smells of bread ovens, tanners, vats, and crowded humanity. In the heart of the town, something unusual begins, something that would confound observers for centuries. A woman, whose name is recorded as Frau Trophia, steps into the street and begins to dance. There is no music, no festival, no cause for celebration. Yet she moves with persistence, swaying, stepping, her body caught in a rhythm of its own. At first, passers-by watch in curiosity. Hours pass, and still she dances. Her face shows not joy, but strain, as though she cannot stop. By the next day, she is still moving, her feet blistered, her body trembling. Soon, others join her, not in merriment, but in compulsion. Within a week, dozens of townspeople are caught in this strange spell. They dance through the streets, their arms flailing, their feet pounding against the cobblestones. Some collapse in exhaustion, only to rise again, moving as though driven by an unseen hand. Imagine the scene: the square filled with bodies swaying and jerking, the air heavy with the sound of shuffling steps, gasping breath, and the murmurs of onlookers who cannot comprehend what they are seeing. For the people of Strasbourg, this was no performance. It was a crisis. The city council convened, desperate to find a solution. At first, they believed the cure might be to allow the dancers to dance the illness out of themselves. They hired musicians, cleared halls, and even built a stage, hoping that by giving the afflicted space and music, the frenzy would resolve. Instead, the numbers grew. Within a month, hundreds were caught in the grip of the dance. Some accounts suggest dozens died, collapsing from exhaustion, stroke, or heart failure. Others may have simply wasted away, unable to eat or rest. What caused this bizarre outbreak remains one of history's great puzzles. The explanations shift with time, each theory reflecting the era of those who study it. Some contemporaries believed it was divine punishments. Saint Vitus, a figure associated with dance and convulsions, was thought to have cursed the city. Others saw it as demonic possession, a spiritual affliction requiring prayer and penitence. Centuries later, scholars proposed more earthly causes. Some argued it was ergot poisoning, a hallucinogenic fungus that grows on damp rye, capable of causing spasms and visions. Yet, ergot poisoning usually weakens the body, making prolonged dancing unlikely. Others suggested mass hysteria, a collective psychological state fueled by fear, poverty, and stress. Strasbourg, after all, had suffered famine, disease, and social turmoil. Perhaps the dance was a physical expression of unbearable tension, spreading from one body to another in a wave of desperate release. Still others see echoes of ritual, a faint memory of communal trance dances once performed in times of hardship. What began with one woman might have stirred old cultural patterns buried deep in the collective mind. The truth is, we may never know. The dancing plague eventually faded as suddenly as it began. By late summer, the dancers dispersed, their movements slowed, their exhaustion overtaking the strange compulsion. Life in Strasbourg returned to its rhythms of work and worship, but the memory lingered, preserved in chronicles and sermons. Imagine yourself standing on those cobblestones centuries ago, watching the dancers. The air is hot, the sun glaring. You hear the shuffle of feet, the uneven rhythm of bodies moving without rest. Some faces are grim, some dazed, a few almost ecstatic, but none at peace. You cannot look away. You wonder whether this is illness, punishment, or something beyond explanation. The sight unsettles you, and yet it carries its own strange beauty, community moving together, unwilling, yet united in their compulsion. The mystery of the dancing plague remains unsolved. Was it sickness, hysteria, or a desperate ritual reborn? We cannot say with certainty. What we can know is that for a few weeks in 1518, an entire city was caught in a rhythm it could not escape. Its streets transformed into a stage for one of history's strangest and most haunting performances. Let us leave Strasbourg behind, with its mysterious dancers, and drift instead into the narrow, twisting lanes of 17th-century London. Here, in a city of smoke and timber, of churches and crowded markets, we step into a small but essential establishment, the apothecary's shop. The air inside is heavy, warm, and fragrant, a blend of sharp spices, earthy roots, dried herbs, and the faint musk of animal products. Rows of shelves line the wooden walls, stacked with jars, boxes, and glass bottles sealed with wax. Some are carefully labeled in Latin, their contents exotic and mysterious to most passers-by. Others are more familiar: sprigs of rosemary, bundles of sage, powders of ground bark. An apothecary was not quite a physician, and not quite a tradesman, but something in between. In 17th-century England, he was the man who prepared remedies, measured doses, and dispensed both medicine and comfort. Imagine him in his long coat, his hands stained faintly from handling roots and tinctures, carefully weighing powders on a brass scale. His counter is not so different from a market stall, and yet there is an air of secrecy about it, a place where science and superstition mingle freely. Among the jars, you might find dried frogs believed to ease convulsions. You might see powdered unicorn horn, though in truth it was narwhal ivory, sold at a high price as a cure for poison. Small boxes contain nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon, imported from faraway lands, valued as both medicine and luxury. Hanging from beams are bunches of lavender and mint, their scents sweetening the air. And on a high shelf, carefully guarded, is laudanum opium tincture dissolved in wine or brandy, a powerful substance used to dull pain, quiet coughs, and soothe restless minds. The apothecary's clients range from noble households to humble laborers. A wealthy woman might come seeking a tonic to aid fertility. A sailor might purchase ointments for wounds gathered at sea. A poor man, coughing from the city's smoke, might pay a few coins for a syrup to ease his chest. The apothecary does not turn them away. He listens, he mixes, he prescribes. In this way, his shop becomes both a marketplace and a sanctuary. Some are rooted in genuine observation: willow barked for pain, mint for digestion, honey to soothe the throat. Others are based on older traditions, tied to humors and symbolism. Powdered gemstones, dried insects, even a touch of mercurial, these might find their way into prescriptions. In a time before antibiotics or modern science, hope itself was often the strongest medicine. The apothecary also serves as a kind of informal physician for the poor, those who cannot afford the fees of learned doctors. He might be called upon to visit homes carrying small packets of powders, wrapped carefully in paper or glass vials stoppered with wax. In the dim rooms of London's houses, by the light of a single candle, he dispenses instructions. Boil this root, steep this leaf, mix this powder in ale. His words are careful, his tone calm, for he knows that trust is part of the cure. Step outside again into the bustling street, and you notice how the apothecary's shop fits into the fabric of the city. Children peer in at the strange jars. Housewives hurry past, clutching baskets of bread. The cries of street hawkers mingle with the chime of church bells. Yet, within those walls, the apothecary holds a kind of quiet power, the ability to ease pain, to comfort the anxious, and sometimes simply to give the illusion of control in a world filled with uncertainty. In many ways, the apothecary's role is the bridge between old and new. He is rooted in tradition, yet reaching toward science. His shelves are filled with superstition, and yet among them lie the beginnings of modern pharmacology. And while some remedies are a little more than ritual, others hint at discoveries that will, in centuries to come, reshape medicine entirely. Imagine yourself there, in that dim, warm shop. You breathe in the mingled scents of herbs and resins. You hear the scrape of a mortar and pestle as powders are ground into fine dust. You watch as the apothecary pours a dark tincture into a vial, his hands steady, his manner unhurried. Outside, the city may roar with its noise, its markets, and its plague. But here, in this quiet chamber, there is a rhythm of care, blending of knowledge, tradition, and human need. And as the day draws to a close, shutters pulled across the windows, the apothecary extinguishes his lamp. The street falls quiet. Another day of mixing, measuring, and healing has ended, and the little shop sleeps with the city around it. And so, our journey through the 17th century draws to a gentle close. We began in the dim, chilly chambers of a surgeon's workplace, where the clatter of iron tools and the cries of patients reminded us of how fragile life once was, and how much courage it took to face both pain and uncertainty. We then walked alongside Andreas Vesalius, a man who dared to challenge tradition and whose quiet persistence altered the course of medicine forever. His story was not one of comfort, but of conviction, and it lingers as a reminder of how knowledge can grow, even in the shadows of resistance. From there, we drifted into Strasbourg, where the strange and haunting spectacle of the dancing plague unfolded, an event that even now resists complete explanation. It is a reminder of the mysteries that history leaves us, the questions we may never fully answer, and the strange ways in which human bodies and spirits respond to stress and sorrow. And finally, we stepped into the apothecary's shop. Its air sweet with herbs, and its shelves crowded with powders and tinctures, a place of hope, of superstition, and of care, a bridge between the wisdom of the past and the discoveries of the future. When you think of all these live surgeons and patients, scholars and rebels, dancers and healers may sense the vast, unbroken chain of humanity stretching behind us. Each generation endured its struggles, searched for meaning, and sought ways to heal both body and spirit. Their world was often darker, colder, and more precarious than ours. And yet, within it, they found rhythm, order, and resilience. As you lie here now, in the quiet safety of your own time, you can let those images fade slowly into the distance. The surgeon's tools, the vellum pages of Vesalius, the crowded square of Strasbourg, the jars and herbs of London, all of them softening, blurring, until they rest gently in the folds of history. Breathe deeply and let your body feel the contrast between then and now. The warmth of your room, the softness of your bed, the calm certainty that you are far removed from those hardships. Their struggles belong to another world, and you are only passing through as a gentle visitor. If your mind drifts, let it wander peacefully, as if walking down a quiet cobblestone street at dusk, lanterns glowing, the day behind you, and rest ahead. Each step slower, each thought softer. And now, as the voices of the past grow faint, you may allow yourself to surrender to stillness. The story is complete. The night is long, and sleep, at last, can carry you away. Welcome, traveler. Allow yourself to settle in and let the world outside drift away. As you ease into the warmth of your space, imagine yourself wrapped in the quiet, still air of a long winter night. The flickering of a fire nearby casts soft shadows across the walls, and the sound of wind sweeping across the snow is faint, yet ever present. Tonight, we embark on a journey through history of survival, beauty, and challenge in the cold depths of winter. Imagine, for a moment, the harsh realities of life lived on this land. The cold, the struggle, the determination of a people whose connection to the land was so deep that their survival was a sacred dance of respect and resilience. We begin with the Native American winter camps, where survival was not just a matter of endurance, but a matter of spirit. In these camps, life was beautiful in its simplicity and brutal in its demands. Now, settle in as we explore why you might not survive a day in one of these camps, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the frost and the forest. Winter in North America is not a season to be taken lightly. It is a time when the earth rests beneath a heavy blanket of snow, and the air becomes a biting force that could steal the breath from your lungs. The sun dips low and early, and the days seem short, leaving little time to gather the necessary resources for survival. Imagine, then, that you have traveled back in time, not to a modern-day cabin, but to a small, isolated winter camp set amidst the wilderness, where Native American tribes endured the trials of the season year after year. The first thing you notice is the cold. It wraps itself around you as you step out from beneath the warmth of the hides that covered you through the night. Your joints creak and crack with every movement, and the chill bites at your exposed skin. The air smells crisp, sharp, and clean, yet it carries a certain stillness. The silence of the snow, undisturbed by the sounds of life, feels almost oppressive, like the very world has slowed to a crawl. You glance around the camp. The shelters are modest, constructed with the same materials that the people had used for generations, each built to provide warmth and protection from the elements. The hides stretched across their frames are thick, but they do little to shield from the penetrating cold once they re-exposed to the open air. Each breath you take creates a mist that vanishes almost as soon as it leaves your lips. The land surrounding the camp is barren, snow-covered and frozen, the trees standing like silent sentinels against the sky. But the camp is not without life. The scent of wood smoke drifts lazily from a fire that burns low. It's not the roaring blaze you might expect. Rather, it's a controlled flame, fed by the dry wood gathered during the fleeting days of fall. It provides warmth and light, but it is a comfort with limitations. The fire cannot protect you from the deeper dangers of the season. As the cold settles in, you realize that hunting is no simple task. Game is scarce during the winter months, and what remains is elusive, drawn deep into the woods or far to the south. The animals that survive the cold are well adapted, their fur thick and their instincts sharper than your own. You would have to venture deep into the woods, each step a careful calculation. The cold will sap your energy, and your breath will become ragged with the effort. The risk of injury is ever present. Even the strongest hunter must be cautious, for a single misstep on the ice could lead to a devastating fall, one that could spell the end of your journey. Food, too, is a rare commodity. It would not be long before your stomach begins to gnaw, reminding you of the emptiness within. If you are fortunate, the hunters will return with something to share, a dried piece of venison or a handful of berries buried beneath the snow. But you cannot rely on luck. The spirits of the land watch over the people, yes, but they are not always kind. The land in winter tests those who seek to take from it. If you do not show respect, if you do not give in return, the consequences can be severe. The harshness of the winter camp is not simply in the cold or the hunger, though. It is the rhythm of life, the daily cycle of survival that wears you down. You wake early, before the light even begins to creep over the horizon. The fire must be tended to, and the children must be kept warm. The elders need care, their bones stiff with the frost. The gathering of wood is a constant task, and each step toward the fire feels like an exhausting journey in itself. Every action, whether it is preparing food, tending to the fire, or protecting your camp, undertaken with care. But even the most careful preparation cannot guarantee survival. A sudden storm could come, snow falling so thick and fast that it covers the paths, making it impossible to find your way. A sharp wind could carry the scent of a predator into the camp, forcing everyone to remain still, quiet, waiting until the danger passes The cold isn't just an external force. It seeps into your very bones, creeping under your skin until it feels as though there is no warmth left in the world. The isolation becomes palpable. You are removed from the modern world, from the comforts of technology, from the simplicity of a heated home. In this camp, you are one with nature, its beauty and its brutality. You begin to understand that surviving this winter is not just a matter of strength or skill, but of spirit. You would not survive a day in this camp not because you lack the ability, but because the land and the season demand a deep connection that takes years to cultivate. It is a life lived in rhythm with the earth, its cycles as natural as your own breath. Yet, it is a life that requires more than survival. It demands respect, resilience, and patience. From the harsh winters of the north, we now shift to another kind of battle, one fought not against the elements, but against the relentless advance of colonial expansion. In the early 19th century, the land that had been home to Native American tribes for centuries was under siege. As settlers and soldiers encroached further into their territories, amidst this chaos rose a warrior and visionary, Tecumseh. Tecumseh was born into a world already steeped in conflict, a world where the traditional way of life for his people was being disrupted by outside forces. As a young man, he witnessed the devastating effects of European colonization, the loss of land, the destruction of cultures, and the displacement of his people. He saw firsthand the increasing pressure on Native Americans as their lands were divided, treaties were broken, and their voices were ignored. Yet rather than succumb to despair, Tecumseh chose a different path. He would not simply endure the onslaught. He would rise up against it. Tecumseh's vision was not just about fighting for land. It was about uniting the diverse Native American tribes into a single, powerful confederacy. He understood that divided, his people would be easily crushed under the weight of European expansion. But together, they could resist. Together, they could protect their lands, their way of life, and their future. His dream was of a united Native America, one where the tribes would stand side by side, strong and unyielding. Imagine the scene as Tecumseh moves through the dense forests of the American Midwest, speaking to tribal leaders, appealing to their shared history and heritage. He was not a mere warrior. He was a diplomat, a strategist, a leader who spoke with the authority of someone who had seen the consequences of division. His words were carefully chosen, his message clear. Unity was the only path to survival. He traveled tirelessly from village to village, urging the tribes to put aside their differences. The message he carried was not one of violence, but of self-preservation. He argued that if the tribes did not stand together, they would be wiped out one by one, their cultures lost forever. The idea of unity was revolutionary, a concept that transcended tribal rivalries and centuries-old customs. Tecumseh's vision was of a confederacy that was not beholden to the whims of foreign powers, but one that operated as an independent and sovereign entity. And yet, despite the strength of his convictions, the resistance he inspired would ultimately prove to be a doomed one. Tecumseh's confederacy began to take shape, and for a time, it seemed as though his dream might come to fruition. Tribes from the Great Lakes region to the Gulf of Mexico joined his cause. Together, They fought against American forces, engaging in skirmishes and battles that tested both sides. But the odds were always stacked against them. The American government, led by President Andrew Jackson, was relentless in its pursuit of territorial expansion. It viewed Native American resistance as an obstacle to the development of the young nation, and it would stop at nothing to push forward. Tecumseh's Confederacy, despite its growing strength, was always vulnerable. The settlers had the support of the U.S. military, and their numbers were growing rapidly. Tecumseh's most significant moment came in 1813, during the War of 1812. He aligned himself with the British, hoping that an alliance with them would strengthen his position against American forces. In the Battle of the Thames, however, his forces were defeated, and Tecumseh himself was killed. His death marked the end of his Confederacy's most serious resistance to American expansion. But his legacy lived on. Although his dream of a united Native America was shattered, Tecumseh's vision continued to inspire future generations of Native American leaders. His defiance in the face of overwhelming odds was a testament to his unwavering belief in the power of unity and resistance. His life was one of sacrifice, a life spent fighting for the survival of his people, even as the forces of colonization encroached further and further. Imagine, for a moment, the weight of Tecumseh's resolve as he stood in the midst of his people, urging them to fight, not just for land, but for their very existence. The vision he had was one of dignity, of strength, and of hope, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. His story is a reminder that even in the most difficult of circumstances, the will to resist can inspire change, even if that change is not realized in the lifetime of those who begin the fight. The death of Tecumseh marked the collapse of the Confederacy he had worked so hard to build, but it did not end the struggle for Native American rights and autonomy. His resistance, though ultimately defeated, sparked a fire that would continue to burn in the hearts of those who followed in his footsteps. From the sharp edge of Tecumseh's resistance, let us drift backward in time, further than his birth, further even than the arrival of Europeans. Imagine yourself walking across the wide flat plains of North America 1,000 years ago, before the frontier, before the colonies. Long before roads cut across the landscape, the horizon stretches in all directions, vast and seemingly endless. And there, rising unexpectedly from the earth, you see something. Unusually enormous mounds, sculpted from soil and clay, shaped by hands that carried basket year after year. These were not natural hills. They were monuments. They were sacred. They were the works of the Mississippian culture, often called the mound builders. The first impression these mounds give is one of quiet mystery. Their scale is immense. Some are flat-topped platforms that once supported great wooden structures, perhaps temples or council houses. Others are shaped like animal serpents, winding across the ground, birds stretching their wings in earth and grass. Still others are conical, towering over the plains, built as burial places for leaders and honored dead. Imagine yourself standing at the base of such a mound, looking upward at a structure built entirely by human hands, without iron tools, without beasts of burden, without the wheel. Only determination, only vision, only countless people working slowly and patiently. shaping the land itself into a reflection of their beliefs. The largest of these structures still stands today at Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis. It is called Monk's Mound, and it rises nearly 100 feet into the air. To climb it now is to walk up carefully laid steps, but in its time you would have ascended by wooden ramps, perhaps hearing the rhythmic beat of drums or the voices of people gathered below. Cahokia was not just a city. At its height, it may have been home to as many as 20,000 people, larger than London at the same moment in history. Imagine the hum of life within it. Farmers cultivating maize in the fertile river valleys, traders arriving with shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from the distant Rocky Mountains. The city was alive with exchange, ceremony, and ritual. Yet these mounds were not simply impressive feats of engineering. They were deeply symbolic. They connected the earth to the sky, the people to the spirits. The Mississippian world was one of balance and layers. The upper world of sky and order, the middle world of the living, and the lower world of darkness and water. To stand upon the mound was to stand closer to the sky, closer to power, closer to the realm of the sacred. The leaders who dwelled there were not just political chiefs, but figures imbued with spiritual authority. Daily life around these mounds had its own rhythm. Families lived in small wooden houses plastered with clay, arranged around open plazas where ceremonies took place. The smell of wood smoke filled the air as meals were prepared, maize roasted, and fish dried for storage. Children played near the edge of the village. Their laughter carried on the breeze. Farmers bent over their fields, guided by the seasons, their labor sustaining the thousands who lived in the shadow of the great mound. The sound of wooden flutes and drums would often echo across the settlement, music woven into the fabric of daily life. But woven into this thriving culture was also fragility. Archaeologists tell us that Cahokia and other mound centers eventually declined, abandoned long before Europeans arrived. The reasons remain uncertain. A tapestry of possibilities. Some suggest that the land was overused, the forests stripped for fuel and building, the soil depleted from the endless planting of maize. Others suggest climate change, a period of droughts and floods that made farming less reliable. Still others believe internal conflict or the strain of sustaining such a vast population caused the fabric of society to unravel. Imagine walking through Cahokia as it falters. The fires burn lower. The mounds remain silent witnesses to a people who once gathered in their shadow. Eventually, the city empties. The great wooden structures fall into decay. The ramps crumble, and the grass grows tall over the once carefully shaped earth. Yet the mounds themselves endure, covered in green, softened by centuries of rain and wind. They remain as reminders that a great civilization once thrived here, long before the history books of the modern world took notice. Today, when you walk across these sites, there's a palpable stillness. Birds perch on the mounds. The grass whispers in the wind. The structures seem quiet, but they hold echoes of ceremony, of life, of belief. The people who built them may be forgotten by many, but their monuments remain, rising from the earth as gentle but insistent reminders. The mound builders, though largely absent from modern memory, were architects of a world as sophisticated as any of its time. Their cities bustled with life, their trade networks stretched across continents, and their monuments still stand as testaments to their endurance. Though the exact reasons for their decline remain cloaked in mystery, what they left behind is a story written not in ink, but in earth. And so, from the cold of the winter camp, through the fiery resistance of Tecumseh, and now to the soft hills shaped by forgotten hands, we come to see a pattern: survival, resistance, and remembrance. Each part of history leaves a mark, whether in the memory of a story told or in the soil itself. From the silent mystery of the mounds, let us move gently into another space, one alive with voices, firelight, and the soft fragrance of smoke. Imagine yourself stepping into the Cherokee Council House. The outside world is crisp, the air tinged with the scent of pine, but within the round, earthen-walled chamber, warmth gathers. The Council House is the heart of Cherokee political and spiritual life. A place where diplomacy, tradition, and community come together. The structure itself is impressive, though not ornate. Built of clay and timber, its walls curve in a circle, symbolizing the unity and balance that guided Cherokee society. The roof is low, drawing smoke from the central fire upward, letting it curl into the sky through a carefully placed opening. As you enter, the flickering firelight greets your eyes first, glowing gently across faces arranged in careful order. The elders sit in places of honor, their eyes steady, their presence commanding. Around them, younger men, women, and leaders of the community gather, their voices hushed as the meeting begins. The fire is not merely a source of warmth, it is sacred. Its steady crackle accompanies every word spoken, as though the flame itself listens, recording the agreements and debates. The Cherokee believed in balance between the red and white sides of their society, between war and peace, between the needs of the individual and the needs of the whole. The Council House embodies this principle. One side is dedicated to peace, the other to matters of war. In this space, decisions are not made hastily. They are woven carefully, with patience, as each voice is heard in turn. You imagine the rhythm of a council session. A respected elder rises, his voice steady, recounting the traditions of the past. He speaks slowly, so that every word settles in the ears of those listening. He does not shout. There is no need. His authority rests not in volume, but in wisdom. Others follow, offering their own thoughts, careful not to interrupt. The conversation moves like a river, winding and steady, circling back when needed, always moving toward resolution. Tobacco is passed, sacred pipes lit and shared. The smoke drifts upward, carrying prayers and intentions to the spirit world. The pipe itself is not just an object, but a living bond. To share in it is to share responsibility. Each puff, each exhalation is both an offering and a reminder that the decisions made here affect every life in the village. Outside the council house, life goes on. Children chase one another through the fields, their laughter mingling with the chirping of birds. Women tend the crops: corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of the Cherokee fields, growing together, supporting one another in the soil. Men return from hunting trips, their breath clouding in the cool air as they bring back deer or small game to feed the community. But within the council house, time feels suspended, devoted to the weight of decision, the shaping of tomorrow. The contrast between daily life and the solemnity of the council house is striking. In the home, voices rise freely, stories are told, songs are sung, and laughter comes easily. In the council house, the tone is different. It is not without warmth, but it carries gravity. The Cherokee world depended upon careful governance, upon respect for tradition and the voices of many. This was not a place for quick judgments or heated arguments. It was a place where silence, too, had meaning. And yet, there is beauty here as well. Between debates, stories are shared, not of conflict, but of the ancestors, of the origins of the people, of lessons carried through generations. Storytelling is woven into the decision-making, for to know where you are going, you must remember where you have been. Around the fire, one can hear not only the voices of the living, but also the echoes of those who came before. Imagine sitting there, the warmth of the fire at your feet, the cadence of voices rising and falling around you. The air is thick with a scent of burning wood and tobacco. The walls of the council house seem to embrace you, holding the community within its circle. Time slows. You feel yourself absorbed into the rhythm of it, all the steady flow of speech, the occasional pause, the rustle of movement as another elder rises to speak. You realize that this is not just a meeting. It is an embodiment of Cherokee values: respect, patience, balance, and community. To step out of the council house, at last, into the quiet night, is to feel the contrast. The stars spread wide above you, cold and brilliant. The fire behind you glows faintly through the smoke hole. The voices fade, replaced by the soft chorus of crickets and the distant call of an owl. Life continues, but the knowledge remains within those earthen walls. Decisions have been made that will guide the people through another season, another challenge, another turning of the wheel of time. And so, we come to the end of our journey. From the bitter chill of the winter camp to Tecumseh's vision of unity, to the mysterious rise and fall of the mound builders, and finally to the warm glow of the Cherokee Council House. We have wandered across centuries of history. Each story has carried a lesson: that survival in the coldest months required more than strength demanded respect for the land. That resistance, though often doomed, could still inspire and endure beyond defeat. That civilizations can rise and fade, leaving behind only quiet monuments. And that the heartbeat of a people lies not only in war and survival, but also in governance, storytelling, and shared tradition. As you return now to the comfort of your own present, you can reflect on the contrast. No biting frost creeps under your skin. No hunger gnaws at you. No decisions for the survival of a whole community rest upon your words. You are safe and warm and at ease. The struggles of the past remain stories, distant, but not forgotten. Allow yourself now to rest. Let the steady rhythm of history drift into the rhythm of your breath. The fire has burned low, the voices have fallen silent, and the past, like a gentle blanket, settles over you, carrying you softly toward sleep.